we go, start recording. All right, so this is kind of where we left off last time, right? Obviously, we're going to do some more review lecture tomorrow. In particular, it's going to be all review lecture. You had a question? Okay. All right. So, oh, remember, this is, that's that ability to kind of go to matcap, right? If you go a couple over, there's this little kind of, remember we have like our little display things up here, wireframe, regular shaded. There is material preview, which is going to do a full EV basically if you have that set up. It's usually that's kind of the default. And then of course there's like the full renderer. But further over, there's this little V right there, right next to kind of right at the end of the last ball there, the last sphere. If you click on that V, you can switch from studio to matcap. And this other sphere right here, if you click on that, you can actually pick a different one, right? So remember, this is kind of in some of those first videos I did. You don't have to have this on at all. If you just want the standard studio, it's fine. But if you do want to kind of get a cooler looking kind of shading look for it while you're modeling, you could do that, right? So remember, it's the default shader thing, but you go to the little V kind of on the right side here. And if you click on that little V, you can switch from studio to matcap, and then you can click on the actual sphere itself and pick a different one, right? So that's why you're kind of getting kind of like not quite a chrome, but kind of like almost like a white kind of shiny plastic metal look to it. So you can have that on, you can not have it on. It's up to you. There's no right or wrong in that instance. That is not something you have to do if you don't want to. I like the matcap shaders. They let you see the form a little bit better because you get like a little shininess, a little bit more light shadow interaction. Subtle, but it's there. But it's optional, right? You can turn that off or on. It's up to you. But it's kind of right there. Studio versus matcap, and then you can pick the different matcaps right there. So at this point, I really just wanted, like I said, to do more kind of extruding and bridging to kind of fill out more and more of this ship, right? So like I said, a little bit of new stuff, not really new tools, but just kind of taking the things we've already been doing and moving them further along, right? Get us a new video for that. So remember, so much of the way we're building this ship is extruding and bridging border edges, right? Now, border edges, remember, are edges that have only one face connected to them, right? That way, if you extrude out or bridge out, it's creating normal manifold geometry structure instead of non-manifold, right? If I was to extrude, like, say, an edge like this one, that edge is connected to two faces. It would create a third one, right? So if I actually do that, you see how the subdivisional surface modifier acts weird? If I was to go put a loop cut through there, you see how it stops when it hits there? That's what we call non-manifold geometry, when you have an edge connected to three faces. That generally causes problems a lot. Many of your tools won't work in that area. If you do have a subdivisional surface modifier on, it looks weird, right? It looks like a paper-thin fin. So generally, not a good idea to extrude non-border edges, right? So if an edge or an edge loop has two faces connected to it, that's not a border edge, and it's not good to extrude or bridge that. However, these are border edges, right? Because there was only one face. So if I extrude or bridge, it creates what we would consider normal geometry, right? Kind of manifold geometry. So remember, we have clipping on as part of our mirror modifier, right? The blue wrench kind of has a lot of our modifier stuff in there. The mirror modifier's on. It's kind of our first thing. If you ever need to change the order of these, you can, right? So some of this is just going to be like informative in this video. The little kind of, there's like these little 8 dots, kind of 4x4, or 4x2 if you will, kind of right here at the right top of the modifier. You can actually left-click drag to change the order of these. And you see how if I put the subdivision modifier on top of the mirror, you see how it doesn't do a proper job of clipping down the center? That's why we like the subdivision surface modifier to be below the mirror, right? So that way the mirror kind of supersedes it and does all the proper effects above it, right? So believe it or not, particularly when it comes to something like mirror and subdivision surface modifier, the order does matter, right? You want the mirror to be on top. You want the mirror to be on top. You guys are probably set up for this properly anyways, so really not an issue, but, never hurts to talk about it, show it to you a little bit. So that was kind of more just informational, right? Just good to kind of see. You probably won't have to worry about it. But in this case, remember, we do have clipping on, and that gives us some neat advantages, right? I could go to 2 for edge mode, right? Remember, 2 is our quick key for edge mode. Remember, it's one of our 2 modes here, object mode and edit mode. Vertex, edge, face, but there are quick keys, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what we're going to start to see next week for our quizzes, is, those modes. So edge mode, right? And I could just kind of, left click, shift left click to kind of select border edges, right? In this case, I'm selecting 3. And what I could do is I could extrude these, right? Remember, we have our extrude tool right here. It's kind of about midway down on this toolbar on the side, right? Extrude right there. Remember, Control E for extrude or elephant or elevator, right? E for elevator, whatever E word you want to use, right? Control E is the quick key for extrude, but it is right there. And remember, if you let your cursor hover over a tool for a minute, it'll tell you what tool it is, and usually tell you what quick key it is too, right? So see if I let it hover over this for a minute, I'm like, oh, that's extrude, Control E. Now, remember, you have 2 handles for your extrude tool, right? The yellow plus, which extrudes kind of along the average normal direction. The white circle, which is view extrude. It'll extrude it based on how your camera is looking at the view, right, the object. And of course, middle mouse button automatically does the view extrude. So I can just hold down middle mouse button drag to do a view extrude for this. And you see how I just extruded a little bit of geometry? Now the extrude tool's still on, so I could do another extrusion. Middle mouse drag. And remember, as we move this towards the center, it automatically welds those. That's what the clipping does, right? And so you see how now I've actually kind of started to fill in the bottom of the ship? So at this point, you can really start to fill in more and more of the parts. And that's a big part of what I want to start to show you guys today was, one, it's still just extruded border edges and bridge border edges. That's really most of the way we're building this ship. But by kind of working with these cylinder primitives, deleting some faces to create border edges, and then just doing that, we can start to build out all these different cool forms. Right? I could bring this down a little bit, this down a little bit. I could select that edge, move it forward a little bit. And now we've kind of got the bottom part of this whole of the ship. Now, if I don't want this to be quite so wide, remember, I'm still in edge mode, right? 2 for edge mode. If I double left click on an edge, remember, it selects an edge loop. If you double left click on an edge, it selects an edge loop. And I could move these edge loops in a little bit. Maybe I want this area to be a little thinner than I had it initially, right? Double left click to select an edge loop, move it in. I could also move these down a little bit, right? Double left click. We use that double left click a bunch on our previous project, right? Also remember that you can absolutely come in here and add edge loops. Maybe I feel like I need a bit more edge loops in here. A couple down is loop cut, right? A couple down is loop cut, right there. There's a quickie for that, Alt-C. And remember, this goes based off of your perpendicular of your edge, right? So if I'm over this edge, it's going to put an edge loop in this way. If I'm over this edge, it's going to put an edge loop in that way. And you can easily just add more edge loops to do shaping with. And now you can start to see that I'm getting a little bit more of a proper form down here for the cockpit, right? This is also where I could start to bridge parts together if I want to, right? So maybe another Alt-C for loop cut. I could put a little edge loop in there. I can always still do a shape adjustment, right? Remember, you can always adjust shape as you go, right? So I can grab that edge, move it down. You can always bring these in and around to adjust the shape more. And I'm just using the middle mouse button on the move tool, right? So middle mouse button automatically does the view move. Remember, though, there is a tweak tool. It's actually Q. Q is your quick key for your selection tool up here. The default selection tool is that kind of orange dashed box with a cursor in it. That's box select, right? If you left click drag, it drags a box. And whatever's inside that box that the camera sees, it selects. See how the stuff on the back it doesn't select? If you turn on X-ray shade, right, Alt-X, although it is a button right there, right? Alt-X, it's that button right there, though. If that's on, it'll grab everything, right? So kind of using your box select to select everything in the box. Just turn X-ray shade on for the moment. It's a toggle, though. Alt-X for X-ray, right? X for X-ray. It is a button right there, though. But remember, there are other selection types in there. We've seen them a little bit on our previous model. Now, this is something you don't have to use. Once again, you might not need this that much. So some of today's lecture is just to have this out there in video form for you guys to reference, right, to talk about. If you hit Q, again, you see how it toggles? Q kind of cycles through the 4 different options that are here. Remember, if you look in Blender, some of your tools actually have this little kind of triangle in the bottom right corner of it. If you hold down your left mouse button on that, it shows the other options. And if you actually have more than a 3-button mouse, you can actually assign some of these to other mouse buttons, right? I have them assigned to mouse buttons, which is cool. But there is, the next one over is a kind of like the original one where it's, orange dashed line, but instead of a box, it's a circle. Remember, that is circle select. That is basically drag select. It uses a brush size, and you just hold down your left mouse button and move your cursor, and whatever kind of edges it touches, it'll select. So that can be a cool way to select stuff quickly. If you hit Q again, it gets to lasso, right? It's kind of a dashed orange, well, lasso shape, right? And that's a lot like the box select, except it's a lasso shape, right? And then, of course, the last one, if we hit Q again, that's all I'm doing is I'm just hitting Q to go through these. You'll see there's one without the orange dashed line. It's really just a cursor with what looks like the move icon. Remember, that is your tweak tool. If you left-click drag on whatever is under your brush, whatever selection mode you're in, it will allow you to just kind of do a view move on that selection really quickly. This can be a really fast, awesome way to make quick adjustments on a shape or form that you want to work with. Do you have to use the tweak tool? No. No, you don't, right? If you feel more comfortable with your regular move tool, just keep using that. But, like I said, I just want to make sure you know, right? If you just hit Q, it cycles through those. If you left-click on the very top one, which is your select tool, which the quick key for that's Q, you see these other options here. But tweak is basically a move tool, and it just makes the selecting and the moving the same, right? If you're using your regular move, rotate, or scale tools, you have to select, then click on the manipulator, right? So it's at least 2 clicks, the selection click, and then whatever manipulator you're going to use for that. Even if it's a middle mouse button for view move, it's a second click. The tweak tool does them both at the same time, 1 click. It's a bit faster. It is based on view, though, so like we kind of saw on our desk and our furniture, we didn't really use it because probably wouldn't have been a good idea. But on something that's more organic with a lot more curvature, the tweak tool can be awesome. An awesome, really fast way to kind of shape things. Remember, you have the tweak tool available to you if you want to use it. It's up to you. Q is the quick key for it, but also it cycles through, right? Q cycles through, but it is right here. That is optional, though. All right, I'm going to save this really quick as another version, but I'm also going to still do a little bit more, right? Because we still got some time before I want to finish this up and give you some lab time. Because one of the other big tools we've been using besides extrude border edges is bridge, right? We used a little more loop cut today because I wanted some more edge loops in here, right? And I made sure to get you guys to see the tweak tool again as an option, right? If you don't want to use it, you don't have to, but you might find you like it a lot. Remember, you can bridge stuff. So you notice how I've kind of got a couple edges here, and there's a couple edges here. So if I want to, I could left-click, shift left-click. Remember, left-click selects. Shift adds to your selections, right? So you see how I can kind of select those 2 edges right there. And then I could probably just shift left-click on those 2 edges, right? But you see these are border edges, right? That's a border edges. Those are border edges. There's only 1 face connected to each of these. Remember, for the bridge tool to work properly, though, you need to bridge same number to same number. So that's to be 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, 1 to 1. Right? It doesn't have to be 2 to 2 all the time. It could be 3 to 3, 4 to 4, but it has to be same number to same number. Also, they should be separate selections. Right? You see how these are on different parts of the model with no contiguous or continuous selection there? Now, in this case, you notice how there's kind of, it looks like if I added this one and this one, there would only be a single face there, a single edge there not selected. So if I want to, I could actually probably add this third one. This will depend on your model, though. This is where you got to kind of have to do a little bit of, kind of how does tab A fit into slot B kind of situation, right? There's going to be a little bit of your own little problem solving for how you want to connect stuff. You do want to try to avoid a lot of huge stars, though, right? Vertices with tons of edges coming out of them. There's certain places that they're acceptable. We'll see kind of in our inner engines because those will be fairly flat. We won't have to worry about it too much. We're not planning to do much sculpting in there anyways. That'd be the only reason you'd kind of want to worry about it a little bit. But most of the time, you don't want very big stars, right? You naturally have some 5 stars. A star is a vertex with a certain amount of edges coming out of it. So right now, if I was in vertex mode, that vertex would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges coming out. That's reasonably acceptable. You're going to have some 5 stars on your models. But you do want to be careful to not have a lot of huge 10 stars on your models, right? Except for maybe in the cylinder in these X sections here. So if I wanted to, I could just shift left click to add a third edge, right? So there's 3 edges to 3 edges. Right click, right? Remember, right click brings up your context menu in Blender. We've seen this a lot. We saw it in our last project. We've already seen it a couple times here. Right click brings up your context menu. In this case, I'm in edge selection mode, so it's edge context menu, right? And you'll see a couple down is bridge edge loops, right? So this brings up most of your modeling tools. Can I find these in this edge menu here? Yeah, so if I go to the edge menu right up here, you will notice, right, bridge edge loops right there. It's just that it's easier, instead of going up to the menu up here, to just right-click, because it'll already bring up most of those. So I can bridge these, and you notice how it created a nice bit of geometry right in there? That kind of connects this section up to there. But you see how it's continuing this kind of flow, right? Kind of this edge loop flow kind of goes up here through this way, like this one goes through there. So that's what's cool about this technique, is it kind of lets us really adjust the flow to follow the shape we want, right? To follow the contours. We wanted this kind of flow up into here. But once again, we can start to see how bridge is very, very cool, right? I can come in here and I can grab this edge and this edge, right? 1 to 1. Right click, bridge edge loops. That starts to kind of fill that in. If I want, of course, I can move this back a little bit, move that forward. If need be, you can actually just fill in faces also. So this would be a new tool. If I double click on an edge, that's a border edge, it selects that kind of edge loop, that border edge loop, right? So Q for selection. I'm still in edge mode for 2. If I double left click on an edge, particularly border edge, it selects that whole border edge loop. So in this case, I could select this little border edge loop with that triangle there, because if you look at this, it's actually 1, 2, 3 vertices. That's going to create a triangle. Right click. Right below bridge edge loops is new face from edges. So if you want to just make a new polygon that's a triangle or a quad, although it could be a bigger one than that, and then you just have to maybe use a little bit of knife tool or connect vertices tool. New face from edges will actually make a new polygon to fill in that border edge loop. That is a triangle, but you notice how that triangle is doing pretty good shape for us. So we're fine with that triangle for now. But you can see how, as we start to do bridge and more extrude border edge, particularly with our clipping on, and even use loop cut, you see how this is starting to look more and more like the cockpit, more and more like the bottom of the ship? And you can start to see that that's really what we're going to do for the rest, is just kind of fill these in as we go. And of course, the new one is new face from edges, right? So if you have an edge loop selected, there is an option in right click right below bridge edge loops, new face from edges. Now if I did it on this big one, you see how it creates a big kind of nasty n-gon? So you can fill in any polygon. It's just that it's a nasty n-gon doing weird stuff, right? So that's why we prefer to do a lot of bridging. Although technically we could connect vertices to kind of fill this in too. But I figured it'd be cool for you guys to see a little bit of the new face from edges if you feel like you need it yet. It creates a face from whatever edges you have selected. Usually this should be a complete kind of a border edge loop, though. In this case, I just did it for that small triangle area. The rest of this was bridging and extruding with clipping. Just to show you how most of this is stuff we do know. And then we're going to keep using most of these same techniques and ideas again and again. Even loop cut allowed us to add those extra edge loops in. But now you see how this shape is starting to take more and more shape. It's got more and more form. So at this point, when you're like, well, where do I go now? Keep going. Try stuff out, right? You could save different versions of this, right? You can go up to File, Save As, and say, hey, I'm going to call this version 6. So I've got a couple of different versions at different stages, so I can go back and do review lectures for you at different earlier parts, right? So remember, you can always experiment, try different stuff out, but you actually already know most of what you need to build this ship. I'm going to kind of do a few other new things as we go over the next couple weeks, but you see we've already got a lot of the ship built now, and it's using a lot of the same techniques and ideas. So I'm not throwing a lot of new ideas at you, not a lot of new techniques. You just got to kind of keep playing, right? You got to keep tinkering, keep saying, hey, I can extrude these border edges in, and it will auto-weld them to create this part of the ship. And then I can start to bridge these together to connect them, and these together to connect them. And if I want to create other weird forms, right? Like I might select this edge and just go Control E for extrude, right? Maybe E for rotate. You guys don't have to do this at all. I'm going to undo it, but just to show you, you can get crazy and build all kinds of weird forms if you want to, right? I can build a whole other little part of this ship back here if I want to. And then we slowly start to fill in and figure out the rest of it, right? I might put an engine back here by extruding, scaling in. We can kind of start to create like an engine hole. So you see how you can start to really just take this further. But it's the same tools. I didn't actually want that on this ship, so I'm going to undo. Remember, Control Z, undo, right? But it is showing you, at this point, once you kind of get like that starting cylinder part, and you start to connect some of these areas up, have fun. Explore, experiment, tinker. That's where you can get to have a little more of your own creative freedom, right? Okay. I think that'll be a great place to stop for this video.